everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm the City Witch. So today's video is going to be quite a short one on the subject of chalices. Now, chalices are not used very often anymore, if I'm honest, and I did use mine for quite a long time with being a high priestess and running a coven. So what I'm hoping to do with this video is show you a few examples from my personal collection, talk to you about the different styles of chalices and how you can use them traditionally and how you can use them in modern time as well. Now, I do fully appreciate that not everyone is going to want to use a chalice and not everyone feels they need a chalice. So if you don't actually want to go out and buy a nice chalice to specifically dedicate to your craft, you can just use a normal glass tumbler if you want, guys. That's fine as well. Now, let's talk a little bit about the chalice itself. So the chalice represents the goddess, fertility, and the element of water on your altar. So traditionally, your altar would be divided into two, and the elements would be on either side of that. So on the right-hand side of your altar would be all of the male energies, and on the left-hand side would be all your female energies. So your chalice would traditionally sit on the left-hand side, represented by the goddess and the element of water. Now, I don't design my altar like that, to be honest, guys. I like my altar to be pretty plain. I used to decorate it quite a lot to represent the seasons, but actually those things just get in the way now, so I don't do that so often. So what I tend to do is I have myself a nice space and I put down a basic cloth, and it's usually velvet and it's usually a plain colour. So currently at the moment I've got a black one on there, I think, and then what I do is I have coloured pattern pieces of materials that go over that, which cover the main centre of the altar, and often I change that based on what I'm working on at the time. So if it's a spell for business, for example, I change it to an orange one because orange is good for that. If it's prosperity or money related, I might put a green one on it. So the main cloth underneath is protecting my space, but the cloth itself that's for the altar is representing the correct energies and the correct colours and incorporating all the correct correspondences. And then on top of that, I will then have a plate, a dish, or a pentacle plate, and all of them are always there. Obviously not every single one because I have quite a few, but depending on what I'm doing and what energies I'm working with, it'll either be a disc or it'll be a plate, and they're all dedicated to the element of earth because that's the representation of that on the altar. And then I usually have deities on my altar as well. So currently it's the goddess I'm working with, so I have representations of her. Then I also have a god and goddess candle that represent the energies of male and female. And then in the centre I usually have a stand that'll have some kind of piece of artwork on it, to be honest. So it'll either be so if I'm working something to do with shamanism, it might have the wolf on it or some totem animals. If I'm working with an oracle deck that day, or I've pulled a card and I want to concentrate on those energies, I might have that on there. Or if I'm working with a certain deity, it might be a piece of artwork for that deity at the time. Or it might be a representation of what energies I'm working with. So if it's something to do with love, it might be hearts, for example. So there's a number of different ways that I incorporate energies on my altar, but artwork is one of the ways I like to do that. And then I usually have a couple of little crystals on there as well, and a space to have some incense. And that is it. The rest of the altar is cleared, so I've got a lot of space to work with, guys. And I don't tend to keep any of my tools on my altar, so I know a lot of witches like to keep their wand or their atham or their, chalice on their altars, or at least near it or underneath it, and I don't do that because I've got a whole room dedicated to the craft. So I tend to spread mine out, and when I cast my circles, it's around the whole room, not just one space, so I can move around the room freely. I can blend and concoct as I need to, and I know I've got everything I need in that room, so I'm not gonna, panic or anything or make a mistake. So as I say, the chalice represents the goddess and female energies upon your altar, and of course the element of water. So the element of water rules over your emotions, love, commitment, and devotion. So really good energies to have on your altar, and those energies should be considered when you're working with your chalice as well. So you're not going to be working baneful magic with your chalice specifically, because obviously your chalice doesn't represent those energies, they're direct opposites. So thinking about the correspondences of your chalice is quite important, guys. Symbolically as well, another way that it's used to represent the female or the goddess during the Great Rite, and it's also used in the cakes and wine ceremony. So the Great Rite is a ritual where a priest and a priestess will come together to represent the energies of the god and the goddess, and usually the energies are swapped. So the man that's representing the god as a high priest would hold the chalice, which is the representation of the goddess. And then the female, who's obviously representing the goddess as the high priestess, will hold the atham or the wand. Now, the atham's more traditional, but a wand is okay as well. And that represents the phallus, which is the male. So representation of the penis. And what would happen in that ceremony is, it's quite long-winded, but the main part of it is that they would come together and the priest would get on his hands and knees, offering the chalice up to the priestess. She would plunge the atham into that and would stir. And the representation of that is she's combining the energies of male and female and bringing that together. And that's supposed to be blessed by the god and the goddess, who's bringing about fertility, fertilizing the earth and the energies of the environment. And of course it represents new beginnings, and it's a way to bless a coven, a rite or a ritual. So it's used quite a lot for that. It's also used in hand fastenings to bless a wedding or in a couple. So that would be done as part of the ceremony by the priest and priestess, and then the chalice would be offered to the couple to take deep sips of. And the idea is they're taking in the blessings of the god and the goddess upon their union. So it's a really nice ritual, guys, really something to incorporate in your ceremonies in the future if it's something you're interested in. But if it's not something you're going to use, the cakes and wine ceremony is a really simple one to do. So that, again, all you need for that is, you know, a plate of cakes or biscuits or a chocolate bar or something, and then you need your chalice and you fill it with water, or traditionally it would be wine, but if you don't like wine or you're underage, I'd recommend just putting water or some fruit juice in it. And you'd have these on your altar, and when you finish doing your ritual or your ceremony or your spell, at the end, the cakes and wine ceremony is used to ground yourself. So you would offer some of the contents to the god and goddess. So I usually have a little thimble and a mini dish on the altar, and I break some of the biscuit off and offer it to the god and goddess, and I pour some of the contents of the chalice into the thimble, and then later I take those outside and offer them to the energies of the earth so that the plants and the birds and that can utilise it rather than it go in the bin. So that's how I like to honour them and, you know, offer them a small dedication from the ritual. I would then close down my circle and take those items away with me and sit in a quiet corner. Now, as I have a ritual room, I don't have to take down the circle, but if you're in a small space, you might want to do that and go away to a quiet corner to relax. I often sit on the floor because you need to be on the ground or connected to the ground in order to be grounded, and then by consuming the biscuit, what you're doing is you're grounding yourself and bringing yourself back into a state of normality, and then drinking the juice kind of does the same thing. And also the thing to recognise about this, guys, is you're taking embodiments of the god and the goddess into yourself as well, so it's very symbolic, very ritualistic, so it's a nice one to incorporate as a ceremony or an honouring process to your deities. And it doesn't matter what deity you follow, even if it's not specifically the god and goddess and you've got specifically named deities, that's fine as well. This can be incorporated in lots of different ways. It doesn't have to be a massive elaborate ritual. It could be something nice and simple that you incorporate just simply to ground yourself while eating the cakes and drinking the wine or whatever beverage it is. Envision as well that all the energies from what you've just done seeping out of you and going into the earth and grounding away. Really think about closing down your chakras while you're eating the biscuit and drinking the wine, and really think about taking in the god and goddess, becoming balanced with both male and female energies, and recognizing that those energies are having a very spiritual impact on your being. Once you've done and you've consumed all the the biscuits or the cakes, and you've drunk all of the contents of the chalice, you're pretty much done then, guys, and you can close down your circle if you haven't done so already and walk away. So it's a nice simple ritual. Now I'm going to show you some of the chalices from my personal collection, and I have a few of them here, and actually I probably have too many thinking about it, so I'm considering actually gifting some away. I'll show you the one I used when I was a high priestess. So the one we had was this one. So this one was a gift from an old friend of mine, and it's made out of brass. It does have this nice smooth shiny coating, dings, and you can see it's brass because of the inside, so you can see how well used it is because it's like tarnished. We used this an awful lot, guys. This was our kind of go-to chalice for cakes and wines and rituals, and I've used this a number of times in hand fasting rituals as well. So this was actually the one we used as a coven. I used it on a regular basis, almost every day actually. It was a well-used item, and then when we ended the coven, or I decided I didn't want to run it anymore and stepped away, this doesn't get used as often as it used to. I still have it on my altar, and as it was a gift I haven't really gotten rid of it, but coming to think of it now, I barely use this, so I probably don't need it anymore if I'm honest. So yeah, so that was used ritualistically. For personal practical use, I use this one. This one was gifted to me by a friend who went over to Germany and he bought it there. Now it's beautiful. Look at all that, guys. That's a really nice piece. It's really smooth and shiny and I really like it. So this is made out of antler, and just for the vegans and the vegetarians out there, this hasn't been, the animal hasn't been harmed in any way. This wasn't used disrespectfully or anything like that. The animal died of natural causes, and this was later fashioned as a representation of the animal, and the spirit of the animal was honoured. And you know, any spiritual store worth its salt, if they're selling anything like this, will make sure all of their items are sourced in positive ways, not negative ways. And of course they will make sure all the items are blessed, cleansed, or at least the spirit of the animal is honoured or recognised in some way, and this was one of those items. So, and as I say, it came from Germany, so a Germany practice, which was really nice for a different point on spiritualism. But this is my favourite. I think it's because of the way it looks and feels in my hand. It's just about the right size for me. I don't have a holder for it though, so I think that's what I'm going to try and design one day. But it usually sits on my altar like that when I'm about to use it, and I usually have a normal tumbler with my juice in. I will turn it, pour it in, and then I will make my honouring and my statements to the god and goddess, and I will hail them, and then I will drink the content and eat the biscuits for the cakes and wine ceremony, and that's how I like to use that one. So another one I have here is one that I dedicated specifically to my dragon magic, and it was this one. So this is a wine glass, guys. So for those of you in the broom closet or still not willing to talk about craft yet and let people know you're a witch, this is perhaps a really good choice. As I say, it's just a gothic wine glass, so to the average person, it's a glass, it's not a chalice, but it can be a chalice because it's shaped like one, it still does the same thing. So this was one of my very first pieces. I've had this now for 18 years, something like that, so I've had it for a very, very long time, and actually the dragon moves because it's not stuck to it anymore, so that's how old it is. But I like this one, I still use this today, so this is an option for you guys to consider. Now, if you are underage and you obviously can't really justify having a wine glass, because how would you explain that to your parents, I recommend something like this. Now, this is actually a tea mug, but it's made out of glass, and this was bought on Amazon. It was, I think it was about 11 quid, so not too bad, but obviously dearer than the average mug, but it's stunning, guys. It's simply beautiful. I'll give you a closer look there. So this is a really nice piece. It's quite wide, so of course you can do a lot with it. You can obviously see the content of it, and there's no reason why that can't be used in ritual practices. And as it's made out of glass instead of ceramic, it's much better energy wise as well, so that's something I would consider if I was you. So other materials you can consider for your chalice would be clay, stone, wood, bone, certain metals. So examples would be things like bronze, silver, gold. I mean, if you can afford a gold chalice, wow, guys. I certainly can't, but there's some options for you. If you are going to look at metal chalices, especially old-fashioned brass ones, make sure that they are lined and safe to drink out of. Some of them actually house toxic metals in them, you know, such as lead and pewter, and they're not safe to drink out of, or they're not they've got toxic ingredients in them. So I definitely think it's worth checking before you do that, especially if you're buying from an antique store. A lot of the older ones were just designed for for symbolic reasons, not actually to be drunk out of, so just be really careful, guys. It's kind of why I stuck a lot of the time to, you know, really modern ones like that, and of course glass, because obviously we know glass is safe. So again, just be careful with your choices, but be drawn to the ones you want to be drawn to, guys. Don't feel like you have to go for something quite traditional like that just because it has a pentacle on it. You know, if you prefer something like that, there's no reason that couldn't be your chalice. Go with what works for you, I say. It's all about you and your practice, and you've got to be happy with it, and you've got to know you're going to use the tool. If you buy something you're not happy with, you're not going to use it. I wouldn't. So I've talked to you about some of the ceremonies and the different ways the chalice can be used, and the energies it embodies when on your altar, and of course the different styles that you can incorporate by showing you some of mine, and then of course some of the different materials they can be made out of. So let's now give you a couple of examples of the ways I have personally used my chalice. So a number of ways I've used my chalice, some of them quite obvious. So an obvious one is collect moon water. So I know beforehand in videos I've said to you, you could get, you know, a glass container or a, you know, drinking bottle, put some water in it, and obviously charge that under the moonlight to gather, to make yourself moon water. But you can use your chalice as well, and if you're lucky enough to have a space where that can go outside quite safely without it being damaged, then great. But if you're not, you can have it on a windowsill on the inside of the house where the moonlight will touch it all night, and just let that charge. So that's one way to use your chalice, guys. Another way to use your chalice is you can bless water for growth, prosperity and vitality, and water all your flowers with it if you really wanted to. I have done that before. I've often done that by adding crystals into the water overnight and charging the water using crystal energy, and then pouring it into my plants around my home the next day. Another method, which is one of my favourites, and there's two ways to do this, guys. The first one involves using, well, they both involve using sigils, but the first one, you would draw out a sigil and you would place it on your altar overnight, and you would leave it to charge, maybe with a crystal or something on it. And then when you wake up the next morning, you would fill your chalice with some plain water. Juice is okay as well, guys, if you want. And you would sit this on your altar and take a few moments to breathe and visualize the sigil charging and filling the water with all its energies that it's gathered overnight for its purpose. So the sigil charges the energy that the crystal has given it with a certain energy, because the sigil's been designed for a certain energy. When I do this, it tends to be based on what I want the sigil to do. So say for example I'm going to an interview that day, I maybe charge it with confidence, do that overnight on my altar, place this on top of it in the morning, visualize that the sigil is becoming dead by travelling that energy into the water and charging the water, and then drink water, thus drinking the content where it's having a physical effect on me. And you can do that in the morning with your breakfast, or before you shower or something. And I would definitely say leave that on the sigil for a good 20 minutes. So I tend to do that when I'm going for a shower, and then come back and then drink it. Another method, if you don't like the sound of placing it on top, is to actually dissolve sigils in water. So I do have a separate video on sigils, guys, so I do recommend you watch that for all the different styles of sigils and how to make them, and the different techniques of destroying them to release their energies. But a fast-acting sigil needs to be destroyed for the energy to be released. And there's various methods for that, and the obvious one would be to burn it in a candle flame or to bury it in earth. But water is another method, guys. So you can fill your chalice with water, and you can draw out your sigil. And again, I wouldn't recommend doing it in ink, because obviously ink's going to come away and make the water go a funny weird colour. I would probably choose to do it in pencil, for example, or chalk. And then once I'm finished and my sigil's done, I would fold it up a couple of times, and again, based on whether it's an energy I'm drawing in or an energy I'm pushing out, depends on how I fold it. So towards me if I'm bringing something in, and away from me if I'm sending something out. And I would take a few moments to visualise the sigil, breathe life into it, and then I would pop it into my chalice. And what that does is I can leave that on my altar all day while I'm out and about, and as the paper breaks down, becomes mush, it's destroying the sigil, which means the energy is being released and freed. Now, to tag lock a sigil to you as a person and to your life to have an effect only on you and not just the environment it's in, you must sign the sigil before you destroy it. So you literally just sign across it your name, so your signature, and then just do what I said, fold towards your away, chuck it in, and then leave it on your altar throughout the day to do its job. And that is a really good technique, guys. It's really simple. I do that quite a lot. I mean, almost daily, actually. I really like sigil magic, and I use sigils a lot for things. That once you draw a load up and you keep a book of them, you don't have to keep remembering them or making new ones. You can keep going back to ones that are tried and tested time and time again. So definitely check out my sigil video, guys. It's one of my more popular ones. So that's definitely a method to use your chalice. Another method to use your chalice would be to make potions or herbal concoctions in it. And of course, if you've got something like this, you can also use it for tea leaf readings. So you can obviously have yourself a strainer or some loose tea in it, and drink your beverage while thinking about a certain subject in your life or a certain area of your life. And then of course you tip it upside down and leave it for about 10 minutes so that the plate and then the cup actually has all the bits on it. Then turn that up and you'd read the plate and you'd read the mug and you'd look for symbolism in it. And then based on what you're seeing, you then go away and divine what that means to you and the symbology behind it, and then make a reading based on that. So that's another way. Another one is to make obviously potions. So you can brew up potions in your kitchen and pour them into your chalice and magically enchant them with your chalice, and obviously drink them from your chalice. So that's another method that I've done as well. Another one is obviously using it in love, because it is the very symbol of love and fertility. So for couples out there trying to get pregnant, you can charge waters with fertility and energies of the goddess, and as it's a literal representation of the womb as well. If you're working with energies of fertility and the particular client or person you're working with has a hostile womb, you can use healing magic using the chalice as a representation of the female womb. You can rub balms on the inside of it, herbs for example, pop some sigils in there. You can even pop a photo of the client in there and have that as a representation of the vagina of that person. And of course you can even pop an image of a baby in there for pregnancy and creating fertility. So there's a number of different ways that I've used the chalice, and symbology is definitely one of my favourite forms of magic, and incorporating lots of symbols on my craft. A recent spell that I did, guys, involved legal work and justice, and I actually used scales. So think outside the box and think about how to use your energies. You know, the atham or the wand is a representation of the man's penis. So if you're talking about a couple wanting to get pregnant, you could actually, sounds gross, but you know, symbolically, you could ask that man for semen and place it on the atham and mix it into the chalice, representing the embodiment of the woman. You could even ask for a drop of blood from the female as well to go in that, mixing the DNAs and incorporating fertility. There's lots of ritual dances you could incorporate in that as well. Another idea to consider as well, especially if say the female's already pregnant and they've been given bad news that the child isn't very healthy, or that they might lose the baby, and out of fear obviously they want protection, you could then use the chalice as a symbol of protection as well. You could wrap cotton or silk around it for protection, with the image of the baby inside, especially if they've had a screenshot already of the baby still inside the womb. You know, all those kinds of things can be used, guys, and they're all beautiful, lovely energies to work with. Fertility is one of the biggest symbols of using the chalice, so the chalice definitely is a really good option for that, especially if you come to work with fertility. And there's a lot of couples out there that are trying to get pregnant, so some of these techniques that I'm talking to you about might be worth a go. It can't harm at the end of the day, can it, to give it a whirl? So I hope I've given you some ideas, guys, and if you think of any ways that you use the chalice that I don't, leave some comments below. I'm always interested to see how other practitioners practice compared to me and the different techniques. So yeah, just give it a whirl and let me know what you think. And thank you very much for watching, guys. I do appreciate it, and if you like my video, give me that thumbs up, and don't forget to click the bell button, because YouTube's terrible at telling you when my videos are out, to be honest, guys. And if you don't already know, I am on various forms of social media, being Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, and of course I'm on Patreon as well. So if you'd like to support me on any of those, then please do so, and thank you very much in advance. And if you do have any questions, guys, as I say, pop them in the comments and I'll get to it as soon as I can. And if you'd like to book any of my magical services for spells or rituals, or you'd like to ask me any questions or for some advice, then please do that from my Facebook page, which is where my primary business is done. So thanks very much, guys, and I do hope you enjoyed the video. As always, be good to each other. I'll see you soon. Blessed be.